Hey, welcome to UK Wildcrafts. I found a lovely patch here of Winter Chanterelles, also known as yellow legs. And I've not filmed these mushrooms yet, so it's a good opportunity to do it, because I found an absolutely great patch of them here. There's hundreds, if not thousands of them. You can find these mushrooms from late autumn and through winter, and they're a really good edible, so it's a good one to keep your eye out for if you're out on a winter walk. And a good thing about these mushrooms is, if you find some, you'll probably find a huge patch of them because they do grow in very large numbers. So I just spotted a few of them here and then carried on walking, and you can just see they're everywhere, all throughout this woodland. Some really young ones just pinning there. And this just carries on all the way down through this woodland. You're most likely to find winter chanterelles around spruce, beech and oak trees. And it's also a mushroom that likes to grow in damp woodlands, and you'll often find it growing in amongst moss. And it's a lot easier to spot when it's growing in the moss, because when you've got them growing in amongst leaf litter, they're a lot more difficult to spot, because you can see they're a very similar colour to leaf litter. It's not until you start to see the stems, the bright yellow, that they're easier to spot. So let's have a look at how to identify the mushrooms. First of all, by the cap or the upper surface. They have a dark yellow to brownish colour, and as the mushrooms get more mature, that colour gets darker. So on mature ones, they're a very dark brown. And then you'll see around the edge or the margin of the cap, they've got a lighter colour. And the margins of the cap are wavy. And in the centre of the cap, on these younger mushrooms, they've got a depression. And then as the mushrooms mature, that depression turns into a hole. Because the stems are hollow, they're like a tube which opens up at the cap. So on the underside surface, you'll see, just like golden chanterelles, they don't have true gills. They have these like wrinkled folds or veins on the underside. So not true gills. And these folds run down the stem, or they're decurrent. And these folds are yellow on younger specimens like this, and they go grey on older ones. One of the most distinguishing features for this mushroom is the stem or stipe, because they're quite a bright yellow colour. As I said before, they're hollow, and what can happen sometimes, not so much with these ones, but they can develop a ridge or depression running down the centre of the stem. So it looks like they've got two separate legs, which is where they get their other name from, yellow legs. Here's a better example of what I was saying, with the stem being split into two. So it looks like two legs. You see it's got that fold running down the length of the stem there. They have quite a pale yellow flesh. They can give off a slightly fruity smell, although there's not really that much of a smell there. If you wanted to do a spore print, then winter chanterelles would give you a white to pale yellow spore print. The only mushrooms that you're likely to confuse these with are other edible Campharellus or chanterelle mushrooms. So these are a fairly safe beginner mushroom as long as you're checking for the lack of gills, but it's got the wrinkled folds instead. It's a very important identification feature for chanterelles. Chanterelles have a nice deep earthy flavour that goes really well with a cream-based sauce. They're also a very good mushroom for dehydrating because they've got quite thin flesh. You don't actually need to use a dehydrator. I just cut them in half, put them on drying racks and then leave them in a well ventilated area, and they should be dry within a few days. Just make sure they're nice and brittle rather than bendy. That means that they're properly dried, and then you can just store them in a jar and then use them throughout the year. And as I said before, because they grow in such large numbers, you should easily be able to collect enough to be worth dehydrating.